Well, I'd like to welcome you to World Evangelism Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gardner, and this is a special edition. I am excited because we have a young lady, missionary, serving God in the country of Colombia, who's currently in Mexico in language school. And she has been through a whole lot, suffered a great deal. God has brought her through or is still bringing her through. She has written a book that I want you to be able to get a copy of. And she has so much to share. And we'll actually do 3 podcasts with her over this week and 2 more weeks. And so spread the word and share the news there. So, Bridget, how about introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Okay. Right now we're serving in Toluca, Mexico, finishing up language school. My husband, Blake Young, is finishing up his final exams this week, actually. And our 4-year-old daughter, Willow, she and I are at home right now because I finished my language school not too long ago. And this summer, we'll be taking a short furlough back to the States over the summer. And then this fall, hopefully August 1st, is our date to be back in Colombia to get back to work there.
Well, praise the Lord. I am so glad to hear that. Now, you wrote a book. What's the name of the book and what's it about?
So the name of the book is called Lost in the Gray, and the subtitle is Breaking the Silence on the Struggles of Infant Loss and Infertility. And the reason that I wrote the book is because my husband and I suffered 2 losses. They were ectopics, and ectopic means that the placenta did not get, I can't remember the word. It didn't start growing in the uterus. It gets stuck outside of the uterus, like in one of the fallopian tubes is the most common place. So ectopic just means it's outside of the uterus when it begins to grow, when the baby starts to grow. It can be extremely dangerous because a lot of times they're not caught and they can rupture and hemorrhage. And so the mother, oftentimes a lot of women die because of ectopics that aren't found. Both of mine were found right before they started to rupture, or they had just begun to rupture a little bit. So I had to have emergency surgery for both of them. And I wrote the book because the circumstances around our first loss were very, very different. They were not your normal ectopic pregnancy. We had been told we had miscarried. And then a few weeks later, we were on our survey trip in Colombia, and we found out on the same day that I was still pregnant, that the baby still had a heartbeat, and that I would need surgery that afternoon. And then when we lost our second, it was through another ectopic. I was flying to the States on a visa run. My husband was back in Colombia because we were in language school at this time. And when I landed in North Carolina, I found that I had another ectopic pregnancy, had another emergency surgery, had the 2 removed. And so then that left me with not being able to have more children at all. I found several good resources for Christians who go through trials. I believe I mentioned those in the second podcast, or maybe I don't remember, but Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, Suffering's Never for Nothing. Those are great books to read if you're going through a trial. But books specifically dealing with infant loss, especially ectopics, I didn't really find many resources. I found a couple of blogs, but nothing that really talked about the hard side of it, especially those that had heartbeats. I kind of skipped over the difficulty part and went straight into the happy and great side of things, which is our end goal. But I wanted to really show the hard things that parents really go through, specifically the mother, that go through infant losses that are not recognized. So anything really like we're going to mention in a later podcast, if your child isn't set in a casket, it's kind of overlooked. And so a lot of the mothers that go through miscarriages and early loss, they have to grieve in a lot of silence, and they don't have anybody to help them through those moments. So it's mainly geared for that. It shares my story. It shares the stories of other women covering different types of losses, from miscarriage to stillborn to loss through medical negligence. And it also discusses infertility and fertility loss.
So you've noticed Bridget mentioned a couple of times the second podcast, but due to my inexperience with this, we recorded this first podcast once, and it didn't it didn't record. And so anyway, we're doing it again. So maybe we'll do a better job this time. Now, Bridget has written 2 books. One of them is already available for you in the Kindle format. You can find it on on Amazon, and I'll have a link to it below the video and also below the podcast or in the podcast notes. When is the hard copy coming out?
So the paper copy is coming out March 30th, which is this Saturday. And eventually I think we'll have a hardcover copy as well. But yeah, the actual paper copy comes out this Saturday and the ebook's already available.
That is fantastic. Now, you also wrote another book, and it's called The Grief Journal. Would you kind of explain that briefly?
Yeah, so that one is called My Grief Journal. And I can't remember the subtitle right now in this moment because I'm nervous, but it deals with feeling deep truths, or I'm sorry, real feelings and deep truths, I believe is the subtitle, or it's like reversed, something like that. And it's set up in a way to allow people to process and grieve any type of loss. It's not written specifically for infant loss, but it has sections where you talk about, here's how I'm feeling today. You write it all out, get it all out on paper, kind of get your jumbled thoughts organized. And then below that is a section, but here's the truth I'm standing on. And so we can take those feelings and base them on scripture. And yes, I feel upset and angry, but I know that God understands that. I know that God has felt every emotion known to man. I feel abandoned, but the truth is that God will never leave me or forsake me. And so it's something to help mirror, okay, here's what I'm feeling, here's the negative things, but I know the truths of God's word, and that keeps us grounded in scripture. So we can, in a very healthy way, move forward in our grief and process those emotions and feelings and still allow God to use them. It also has a section for just extra journaling, to journal whatever you would like, maybe a letter to your lost loved one, to your child. Some people find that very helpful. Or just to journal about your day, maybe, things that this was a milestone this person would have reached today. Today's their birthday, or today I just feel like journaling because it's a hard day, or, whatever it may be, just to help people to better process and deal with things that may not have resources other than really writing.
So I'm not sure everything that we covered in the first one. And if I'm missing something, you be sure and jump in and help me so we can get as much of the best material out. You went through a series of emotions, feelings in your life, anger or whatever. And so what would you share about what it's like to be where you've been?
It's a place I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's not a place that anyone ever wants to be or to ever have to repeat. Losing one child is hard enough. It's extremely difficult. It comes with a lot of guilt, whether that loss is you've seen the heartbeat of your child or your child has died already, and then you still have to birth the child. Whether you're birthing it through miscarriage or through surgery or through stillborn, that's all types of birth. Every mother is going to feel a sense of guilt with that because we feel that our body has failed us. So there's a guilt that comes with it. There's obviously a very deep grief. There's reminders everywhere you look. It's not something that you will ever get over. I've had people say, I don't understand why I'm not over this yet. And I tell them, a mother will never get over her children, and that's okay because you're their mother forever. You're not supposed to get over your loss. But it can be a very difficult thing when dates come up and you're like, oh, Helen would be 3 years old this summer and Anaya would turn 1. Those are difficult days because you're making cupcakes, but there's no child, to celebrate physically there. But we still recognize those days. Or you're out shopping and you see baby clothes, or you see somebody pregnant. There's a lot of things that mothers will see that are reminders and triggers of what they could have had, but what they don't have. And that's really heavy in and of itself. It's very isolating at times because depending on the type of your loss, the earlier it is, the less important it seems, the less significant it seems, which is really sad. There's a phrase
that's the less important it seems to other people, not you.
Oh yeah, to the mother, it's extremely real because the second a mother finds out she's pregnant, we start planning, the nursery theme, things we need to buy. We start the Amazon wish list. You start planning everything, and then it's gone, and you're grieving all of the things that you have lost, all the things you won't get to experience, plus the life that you had to lose as well. It's devastating because that life was a part of you. It wasn't an accident or a mistake, and God only allowed you to carry that baby maybe for a short time, but it's still a life that needs to be grieved, and a mother has every right to grieve that child. I made the comment in my book that may ruffle some feathers, but because of the circumstances around my first loss, the baby was alive when I had to go into surgery, and it was a medical abortive procedure. There's just no other way around that. That's just what the truth is. And for a mother to have to choose to end her child's life to save her own is extremely difficult, especially for Christians, I would say, because Christians are on the side of the picket line. We're all against abortion of any kind, we say. We believe life is at conception. We're ready to support those who want to carry their babies. Yet when someone in our own circle loses their baby early on, it's almost treated as if that life wasn't important. And so sometimes I feel like Christians are fighting for the lives of those we're trying to save from abortion in what I would say the normal sense that we know it, but we're kind of ignoring a lot of the mothers that lose through early miscarriage, early ectopic, chemical pregnancies, things like that. We kind of brush those aside, and we just say, oh, well, I hope you have another baby really soon. And that mother does not want another baby. That mother wants the baby that she lost. She may at some point get to where, okay, I'm ready to have more children, but that baby will never replace the one that she lost.
The facts are your baby couldn't live and you couldn't live if you hadn't have taken care of it. Right. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so you're stuck in kind of a rock and a hard place, because no matter the decision you make, the outcome is going to be devastating either way. And in the medical field, and I understand this now, if I had said, no, you cannot do the surgery because my baby's alive, they could have overridden that and just gotten a doctor to sign off because my life was in danger. The tube was beginning to rupture. It was a very dangerous, serious situation. And so really in those situations, the patient, the mother would have no control over that, because the doctor is going to do anything he can to save your life, which is what he's supposed to do. But as a mother, it puts us in a very difficult place. That's why the book is called Lost in the Gray, because for me, for so long, I felt I have been in between kind of the black and white. I used to know this is right, this is wrong, this is what abortion is, we stand against it. And then I was kind of caught in the middle, like, wait a minute, what about the people that are like me who have to have what is considered an abortive procedure because my baby was alive, but where's the support for that? Nobody wants to talk about it. It's either you're getting an abortion for wrong reasons, or you're having your baby, or you lose it naturally. There's no kind of middle ground that I could find where anybody wanted to walk with me through that, except for really professional counselors and therapy. And so for a long time, I felt lost in this fog, this gray area. And my husband and I had to keep those details really private because we were afraid that, people would judge us. We felt very guilty for the decision that we had to make, even though there was no alternative. That was the only decision we could make in that moment. But that's still very difficult for a mother to process and learn to accept and learn to live with.
So you need to buy the book, Lost in the Gray, because some things are hard to understand. And unless you've been there and dealt with it like Bridget and Blake have, I don't understand. And until this podcast, I really didn't comprehend how terrible this is. I know that Blake and Bridget do not believe in abortion, but they were faced with a situation where they had no choice. So get the book, get the grief journal, and use those to help you grow. So we've discussed it, but I can't remember in what area when we discussed it. But you went down deep into a pit. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So after our first loss, we were in the middle of deputation when that happened. Went home. I finished my time recovering from the surgery, and then we just hit the ground running again. We finished deputation. We just faked it till we made it. We got to the field to start language school. And I thought I was handling it really well until the first year. The 1 year anniversary always falls on Thanksgiving, or the day before, or the day after. And I thought I was going to be okay. We hosted Thanksgiving at our house. And after that, I just spiraled into a really, really bad depression. It was bad. And then a friend reached out and suggested that I talk to somebody and get professional help. And that did help, but it got worse before it got better, because when you take something very traumatic and difficult, like that type of situation, and you put it away for so long, eventually it's going to build up and build up, and then it just spills out, and it's going to affect every part of your life. And there's nothing you can do except to face it, to deal with it, process it, and move on, so you can begin to grieve and begin to get through it. Because really, we hadn't grieved that loss, or I hadn't, at least, because I kept ignoring it, because I just couldn't handle the guilt. And again, after I was doing better, we got pregnant again, and then we lost our second baby and the ability to have more. And that just triggered me to fall into another deep depression. And I just felt that God was against me, that he was no longer good, that he's punishing me. We had people tell us some really ugly things after that loss as well that didn't help the situation. We had people say things that they meant well that just caused more hurt, like, oh, we hope you have more kids again. Have you considered adoption? And this was less than a month after we had lost our baby. Those are not something a mother needs or wants to hear in that moment. And that was hard. I almost walked away from my marriage and ministry. I told my husband one night he needed to pack his bags and leave. And our pastor came and helped us through that and offered some great counseling. And by the mercy of God and my super patient, loving husband, we are where we're at today. And our marriage is so much sweeter for it. But yes, I got in a place that I hope I never, ever, ever go back to. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to wake up anymore, because it felt too heavy to carry. And I was trying to carry it all on my own and deal with it all on my own, because I didn't think that God was trustworthy anymore.
I am so very, very sorry for all that you and Blake have been through. And I know that it's got to be 1,000 times worse for the mother than it is for anybody. But no matter how deep the pit is, you found out that God is still deeper. And so Corey Ten Boom said that no matter the depth of the pit, God is deeper still. And so I am so grateful for how God's brought you through. What Bridget's trying to do is help any lady. So every pastor listening to this ought to pray about getting as many copies of this book. Ladies in our churches have lost their babies, some wrongfully through abortion, but they're hurting and they need help. They need help.
Yes.
They don't need to be judged. They don't need to be criticized. They don't need to be hated. If they realize they wish they hadn't have done it, they certainly need loving arms. You want to say something about that? I'm going to mention others, but you want to say something? Some
Yeah,
people have had an abortion, but they love Jesus. They want love.
exactly. And I bring that up a few times throughout the book. I mentioned, to the woman that had an abortion because they chose to, not for, medical reasons or because her life was in danger, that there's always redemption found in Christ, that this book is not written to judge them or make them seem like their loss wasn't important, and that they still have every right to grieve their child, to hold a memorial for their child, to seek counseling for the grief of that child. And then later on in the book, we also discuss a little bit on Mother's Day, how Mother's Day can be very difficult for women who have lost children and there's no children there with them. And I'm glad to hear that there's been one lady reached out to me. She and her husband are pastors in New York. And she said on Mother's Day, what they choose to do is to give every woman a flower. So that way people don't feel left out if they don't get to stand up or they feel they can't. And I write in there, this isn't a popular opinion, but if there's a woman in your church who's had an abortion, she's a mother. Whether you want to recognize that or not, that's the truth. And if she's in church, then that means she's seeking a relationship with the Lord. She's seeking to grow. She's seeking redemption. And God is going to cover that just like he covers us. And she has every right to receive a flower and to recognize, yes, I have a baby in heaven. Maybe she's named that child. And she has every right to grieve that child, to honor their child. And she deserves to be recognized as a mother, because if she's in church, if she's seeking a relationship with the Lord, then she's doing the same thing as any other Christian is. And that's trying to live under God's mercy and grace and to do better today, and to share. Maybe she wants to share her story with others about God's redemption. But sometimes they need help with that, to show that you're loved here, you're welcomed here, your sin is covered under the blood of Christ, and you have every right to recognize that you are a mother. Whether other people may say, oh, she doesn't deserve that, or, she made that choice. She did, but today's a new day and God's mercies are new every day. And we have no idea her circumstance, but no matter what the reason was for the choice she made, She's still a mother. Her child was not an accident, and God can still use her child in a beautiful way and use her story. And I would be honored to sit by any of those women in church on Mother's Day and to give them a flower and to hear their story and to share their story if it helps other people and if God can use that in, beautiful ways, just like he can with my story.
Well, I think that the lesson here is that we're not pro-abortion, but we are pro-love and loving the person that made a mistake, that did wrong, and wants to get their life right. And they ought to have a place they can go, and they ought to be loved. And I think Bridget's book's going to help those people. And I don't mean to be rude to you, Pastor, but there are ladies in your church that have done that, and no one knows about it, but they're hurting. And this book could help them. And the grief journal could help them. Then there are mothers that babies that it's not like Bridget's story, but they miscarried, or the baby was stillborn, or maybe they can't have children, and they're hurting. And Bridget's going to explain to you over the next couple of meetings some of that. But her book's written. How would your book help those people?
So the second to last chapter, chapter 9, is called "To Those Who Lead," is the name of the chapter, and it's specifically written for either pastors, pastor's wife, or any Christian who maybe leads a women's ministry, or it's really for anybody. Anybody can glean from it, I think, or who wants to learn how to walk alongside of parents, mothers, especially, but also the fathers who go through infant loss, infertility, or fertility loss, how to help them, how to guide them to professional help if needed, how to pray for them, what not to say, what to say, things to just do and not wait for them to ask. A lot of mothers may not reach out for help. I know I didn't, and I wanted to, but I felt like people were too busy, or they were going to think that, well, I should be over this by now. But so some tips I would offer now: if you know of someone who has recently gone through a loss or fertility loss, show up at their house with a meal. Don't ask them, hey, can I help you with a meal? Just show up. Just do it. Don't ask, just do it. And that's going to go a long way. You have no idea what a huge blessing that will be. I had someone just show up at my door one night with a sweet basket with teas and socks and a candle after my first surgery, just like a basket for kind of self-care. And that was such a huge blessing, because that would have been something I would have loved to get for myself, but I, didn't think I deserved it. And someone brought it. After my second surgery, my mom helped with the cooking and cleaning and watching Willow, and people sent us a few things. But after my first surgery, I had to pay someone to come clean my house, and I asked them to come clean it. And they're like, "Oh, I heard you're recovering from a surgery." I was like, "Oh yeah, it was just an outpatient. I'll be fine in a week." And I didn't want to talk about what the surgery was for. I didn't share that. But it would have been such a blessing if someone had come, for even a month, once a week, for a month even. "Hey, I'm here to do your laundry. Hey, I'm here to cook some meals. Hey, I have some freezer meals for you. Hey, I'm just here to sit and talk to you and to listen to you or to pray with you." Those are such a huge, huge blessing. But even not just a month after, but even up to a year, 2 years after, it's good to check in on those mothers and to continue to walk with them through this journey. So many people want to sit with the comfortable and the joy, and they don't want to sit during the seasons of grief. And we learn, we see in the cycles of the seasons here on earth that seasons last more than just a day or a week. Some seasons last several months, and they repeat. Sometimes you have seasons of grief and it goes away for a while, but it always comes back. And so I talk about that in my book, just to be available for them, just to listen, keep the cliches at home, keep all of the things about we need to be praising right now and rejoicing, that there's a season for that and it will come. Right now, they just need someone to sit with them in their grief, to keep speaking gentle truths in their life, but showing that God is here with you in your grief. He loves you. He's not punishing you. Or, I have a list on how to pray for the woman who's going through that, and even her husband. Pray for her heart to stay tender towards God. Pray for her marriage, because it's very stressful on a marriage to lose a child, especially if you lose a child in any loss is traumatic, but some are it's a different level of trauma, I would say. And so that chapter 9 does discuss that. It's has quite a few different points and suggestions there for people to take what they will.
Well, I think that I pastored and led people for over 50 years, and I'm learning from you, and I appreciate it. This is helping me to grow, and I hope as you listen to the podcast that is helping you to grow. And Bridget wants to come alongside people that are hurting. She's been down in the pit and she knows what it's like to hurt. And Lord's bringing her out in lots of ways. She's already out, but as she stated, she's going to have to suffer. You'll never get over it, will you?
No, no, because every year there'll be a birthday. Every Christmas we hang up 2 white stockings to represent our babies.
Tell them your name, names of your babies.
Oh yeah. So our first loss we named Callan Vision Young, and our second loss is Anaya Oak Young, and Anaya means God has answered. And we have things. I used to not display things in my house because I felt that it was not acceptable because they were such early losses. But I have since moved things out where people can see Callan's ultrasound. I have a picture of his heartbeat, and we have Anaya's urn that holds his ashes. Every Christmas we put out stockings for everybody, and I got 2 white ones to represent Callan and Anaya. Every year on their birthday, Willow helps me make cupcakes. So this year we'll be celebrating Anaya's first birthday, probably stateside with my family. That would be the first time we can celebrate one of their birthdays with my family. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that was very sweet. And we'll probably do Callan and Anaya's birthday celebration on the same day because their due dates were less than a month apart, one in May and one in June. So you always have the birthdays. You always wonder, what would it be like running around with 3 little kids, 4 and under? What would it have been like, to experience certain things at certain ages? You wonder, what age would they have been crawling? What would their personalities be like? There's always reminders and triggers that a mother's going to face. And so it's definitely nothing that you get over. And a mother shouldn't. But it changes. The grief does change and evolve with time, and you learn how to better carry it and handle it. But there are still some days where some things are just a lot harder to handle, or it just comes really, really strong, and it was as if it had happened yesterday. And in Callan's, his loss was 3.5 years ago. And there's still some days that it's just as heavy as it was when we went through it.
I hurt for you and I hurt with you, and I know Blake hurts. Bridget has a book called Lost in the Gray. And what is the grief journal again?
The grief journal is my grief journal. I can't remember the subtitle. I believe it's Real Feelings and Deep Truths, or vice versa, Deep Feelings and Real Truths. I should have written it down so I would remember.
We will put that in the show notes, and you can see that and links to get those. She will be with us for 2 more episodes. They're already recorded. And we thank you for taking the time to be with us today. This is the World Evangelism Podcast. It's a special edition because I really believe that Bridget has help for many people. I think that she's been down in the pit and learned and come out, and we can all grow from it. And I am so grateful to God for who she is and what she's doing and the young lady that she is. And it makes me appreciate moms more. It makes me appreciate what you've been through. And I thank the Lord for that. It's kind of time to quit, Bridget, but do you have some co-authors? Is that correct?
Yes. So there's 3 main people that contributed to the book. I have one lady that contributed to the majority of chapter 8, which is on infertility and fertility loss. And then I also had my counselor and grief therapist contribute to 2 chapters, one on grief and marriage, and then the other one, they contributed to the chapter about therapy. And both of them are professionals, licensed. They help people walk through grief every day. And they've contributed a lot of really helpful insights as well.
So I just believe there's a wealth of information here from Bridget, and I'm excited about how God is using her. And I hope that you will subscribe. If you like this, give us some likes on the YouTube page and share it with other people. And let's see if we can't be a blessing to people that are hurting, lost in the gray. They're lost in the gray. They don't know how to get back to the light sometimes. And sometimes the decisions are lost in the gray. You just don't know what to do. So would you please pray with them pray with Bridget? The first time we made this recording, I froze, and I'm frozen again. What do you think? So anyway, thank you so much for listening. This is the World Evangelism Podcast. Bridget, any final words?
Just thank you for this opportunity to share more about my book and to reach other people.
Well, thank you all very much for listening today. And I pray that it's been a blessing to you. And I'm frozen every way I look at it. But hey, we will see you the next time. God bless you.